Hey there, welcome into Tracking the Tropics on this Tuesday. Hank Allen here with Natalie Parsons on this World Cup semifinal day as we talk sports beforehand. Also MLB All-Star Game Day.
Lots of sports going on.
Fantastic. Luckily not much in the tropics. Lots of sports that you can watch on sort of this cloudy, gloomy Tuesday. You know, when I was a kid, tomorrow would be the only day of the whole year where there were no professional sports.
Oh.
Because you had the break after the All-Star game before the season started back. And back then, 30 years ago, there was no women's basketball league.
Yeah.
There was no summer NBA. There was no soccer.
So everybody was upset the day after.
So yeah, you just had nothing on that Wednesday. Now there's other sports out there. All right, anyway, let's talk about the tropics here. Really not a whole lot going on, as we know, which is nice. Starting off with that visible satellite, as I like to do, because there's a lot of cloud cover in the Gulf, all based off of the storms that we have and the system that we have out there over the past couple of days, and sort of a broad swirl here across central Mississippi as well. So you've got this sort of upper level low feature here that's spinning around that is going to work its way, I guess, to the west over the next couple of days. You've been looking at more today than I have, but and then that ridge sort of builds in behind it, and then we start to dry out, and it just gets very hot.
Yes.
Is the theme.
There's a trade-off.
Over the next few days. Yes, we are in that time of year. That is the trade-off indeed. So as we look at that tropical satellite, you can see all those clouds.
Yeah.
But again, nothing really tropically induced here. It's all with that little front that we've had over the area the past few days. And then a little cloud cover down there around, what was that, Nicaragua and Costa Rica down there, I guess?
Central America.
Central America, yep. Nothing really pending with that either. As a matter of fact, you can see all the wind shear associated with that. As you look at a lot of times, stretched out. A lot of times we talk about wind shear, and certainly that's been one of the themes this year coming up with El Nino.
Yes.
With the Atlantic wind shear, to where you get this cloud cover and everything just getting blown off to the east, and that's a great example of that.
Beauty.
Yeah, that's what you like to see if you don't want to see tropical development. Not that that is necessarily El Nino derived, but that's just an example of the wind shear that we will talk about sometimes. And of course, still early in the season to really get much out in the Atlantic, but nothing out there at the moment.
Quiet. Knock on wood, though. I mean, once we get into August 1st, that's when we really start to see the up and up. And then we get into September, which is, supposed to be popping, but we'll see what happens with Mother Nature. We obviously don't want that, but as weather folks, to an extent we do, because we're not normal.
It gives you something to talk about at least. And then right on the edge of the satellite, I guess that could be considered maybe the first sort of wave of the season. Way out there, not really looking at any development with that. And we'll get to this in a little bit, but you mentioned dust.
Yes.
Really out there.
Saharan dust is going to be working in our favor over the next few days.
Absolutely. And we'll show that graphic here in a second. But as we clear up locally Thursday, Friday, Saturday, dust moving in, some nice sunset potential here. Also anybody with respiratory issues, of course. We've had
asthma.
Yeah, a lot of people get impacted by that. Yourself included, I know.
Yep.
And then this is something you've been looking at. Take us through the Pacific here, because it's a much different story out here.
We've been seeing this courtesy of El Nino. It just seems like the entire hurricane season thus far has been popping with one after the other, and this is a real display of that. I mean, we have 4 areas that we're keeping an eye on right now, but yesterday we actually had a little X in the middle, which has gone bye-bye. So we're just going to focus in on this red area, which basically we're that 100% area, which is going to be, they're kind of overlapping.
That's the top one there. Yeah.
That one is basically a hop, skip, and a jump away from turning into either a tropical depression or a tropical storm. They're expecting it maybe either later today or at some point tomorrow.
So that's that batch under there, I guess.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive looking already. You can see why they got 100% on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's been at that all day, and I think it was upgraded to 100% today.
Okay.
Because I was making this model, this graphic and stuff yesterday, and so it's just like, okay, what are we doing here? But then this one's not that far off, but they're not thinking any formation over the next 48 hours, but potentially over the next 5 days. We could go seeing something there. So, but luckily it is expected to go moving westward. So no threat at this time really for Mexico. But I mean, I would think that they would probably, do they get rip currents like we do?
Well, certainly.
Okay.
Yeah, certainly if something's close enough. Now, as you said, that's moving off to the west,
so
but may not be close enough to impact, but you can certainly see some of the outer bands of thunderstorms with that. So at the very least, the potential and also just the flow in general. I mean, you've got this northerly flow here. You would expect some circulation around that, sort of the opposite. So usually when you get that
A little
sort of,
flooding.
yeah, conflicting flow, you could get some
High surf.
Yeah, some high surf certainly and some rip currents. So that one looks like, I mean, that one, I don't even know what the point is of 100% over the next 2 days.
Shouldn't it be something
It's like,
already?
yeah. Just
usually, usually
like
once
the
it gets.
potential tropical cyclone or something.
Yeah, yeah. So
I think they'd already have a track on that.
it's like get your popcorn ready. Let's see, when is it going to happen?
Yeah. Take bets on exactly when that happens. Actually, I guess you could probably do that. You can bet on anything nowadays.
Yeah. So right here was where the X was yesterday, but that's not really an area of concern. So moving it a little bit further to take a look at these two, we've seen slight increase in the chances of formation for these. The one over here is at 40% for both over the next 48 hours as well as 5 days, and that one is 30% over the next 48 hours and 50% over the next 5 days. These are just several hundred miles south of the Hawaiian Islands, so we got to go thinking about our friends there. Hopefully they don't go dealing with either of these, but another scenario where we could potentially see tropical depression, tropical storms and whatnot if the situation is right. Some slight disorganized showers and storms and stuff over here.
Boy, this is a wild scene.
It's nonstop.
I mean, this is crazy. This looks like, and as you mentioned, not unusual necessarily for this time of year, but this looks like, I'm gonna go back to it just so we can get sort of the broad scope here because this is nuts.
Unreal.
This looks like the MDR, the main development region of the Atlantic, like what we see a lot of times in August and September, but not even to this extent. I mean, you just have a ton of activity going on here.
Yeah, I don't even think, what was it, 2025, 2024, where it was nonstop across the Atlantic? I don't even think we had this many at a time.
No, it never quite looked like that.
No.
That's pretty wild. And as you know, at El Nino, you've got those warmer waters, which I guess the core of the warmth is maybe just to the south of this, but it's certainly influencing that. I would think, with the warmer water and also the trade wind difference already starting to pop up, so you're just getting more stuff conducive for development, I guess, in these areas. But that is wild. That's a wild scene there. And, you know, that's a lot of times where, you know, people ask me, well, what about these seasons, these really active seasons, as a concern that's so active? You talk about climate change and all that. And I'm like, well...
Why are you bringing that into the scenario?
Well, you know, my point is always,
controversial.
it is, and certainly I'm not getting into that in this show, but my point has always been, I'm not overly concerned until both sides look like this. You know what I'm saying? It's like if you got the active Pacific and the quiet Atlantic,
oh gosh,
well, I don't have a problem with that, you know, because it's all an energy transfer. That's all hurricanes are. It's an energy transfer from one part of the world to another. And so that's what clearly we're doing here in the Pacific. And as we noted, there's absolutely zero in the Atlantic. So now if we had both sides looking like that,
both sides popping,
I would say we've got some problems here.
Armageddon.
And the world is quickly, becoming distorted, but that's not what we have at the moment. All right, we'll take a quick break here. We'll come back and talk more about that dust as we mentioned, and maybe something to watch in the Gulf. We'll talk about it coming up. All right, welcome back in. Hank Allen, Natalie Parsons with you here on Tracking the Tropics as we move on from that extremely crowded Pacific to talk more about what we're going to be keeping an eye on over the next week or so. And we'll show you the upper level pattern here across the U.S. Now, this is the 500 millibar chart, if anyone knows what that is, not to get too technical. Basically, the level of what planes fly at is what we're looking at in the atmosphere here. So when we talk about upper levels and troughs and ridges and that sort of thing, this is the level that we're talking about here. And obviously, during the summer months, most of the time, we've got the big ridge across the central parts of the country. And think back to, what was, I guess, about 2 weeks ago when we had no rain. It was 95 every day.
It was nice.
And it was just...
It was nice. Well, I like the heat.
For you and Susie, I guess. Susie Rosen loves that type of weather, too. For those normal people of us, we get a little tired of that after a while. But that was one of those times where you just had that massive sinking ridge, of course, that big heat dome across the central parts of the U.S. And you can see why we're talking about this weekend being a little bit more quiet, because you start to get that ridge building back in, at least for a couple of days here, with the overall theme being ridging across the central parts of the country, so a little bit of a hotter, drier pattern. It's interesting, though, it's not, and what's interesting about this to me as we head into next week is it's not the full-scale, just massive ridge everywhere, because you can see that break in it right here. And so you start to get maybe a little piece of the ridge over us, and you start to get that Bermuda high, but you got a little bit, you know, not compared to the north, obviously, but relatively lower pressure there across the southeastern U.S., and that's what we have to watch for, I think, as well, heading into early next week, because you can see that ridge trying to build back in by Wednesday. But look at this trough here. This is what's interesting to me is this big trough, which is kind of unusual for the middle of the summer, obviously. I mean, we're not talking about a lot of times huge troughs in July across the northeastern U.S., but I think that is sort of a standard El Nino look, where a lot of times we'll see a little bit of that cooler
the jets
look
and
across,
stuff.
across the northeastern U.S. You've got the massive high out there over the central Atlantic. You've got this huge ridge here across the western U.S., which, yes, according to this model, does sort of extend into our area. But the bigger theme is the lower pressure and the gap in those two ridges here across the southeast. And look, even this right here. And that's sort of that lower pressure sneaking in. And so what day are we on here? Wednesday afternoon. That's this model sort of indicating that there's something in there knocking that ridge back a little bit. Now, is that a, just sort of a broad low, maybe a tropical wave, maybe some sort of tropical system? And so this is just one model run, and we're talking about, what, 8 days out. So obviously things are potentially changing. Yeah, absolutely. But if you were to look at the ensembles of this, which is the European, and the ensembles, of course, are just a bunch of different models run. I don't particularly like the ensembles because it's like everything's different in them, but a lot of people swear by them. And I will say during the tropical season, they do help you pick out points of
interest.
Yes.
Little things to keep an eye on.
Exactly. And so if you were to look at the ensemble models, there's a bunch of them with little lows stuck all over the Gulf here. And so this is just the actual run of the model. But I think it does indicate to us that A, there's a trough in the east, which is kind of lower pressure anyway. And B, we've got this little something in the eastern Gulf, which is causing it to say, hey, maybe that knocks back that high pressure a little bit. If we had some giant high stuck over us, we really wouldn't be talking about this so much. But,
so this is next Wednesday, not
next
tomorrow.
Wednesday, yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah, great point.
Okay.
And so when you think about how Arthur formed, it was kind of like that. It was just like something sort of trying to form under that bigger ridge to the north. It wasn't that impressive, but, I've been on record, and I know you and I have talked about one, maybe two storms, June and July. We've already had one.
Ish.
Sort of. We certainly had the impacts of it. I'm still not convinced that that was an actual tropical storm, but nevertheless. So do we get another one? And the other factor here is the fact that MJO that we talk about all the time, the Madden-Julian Oscillation, which I've talked about on air before, we've made posts about it, you and I have talked about on this show numerous times. We're coming into that phase again next week that we were in when we saw Arthur develop. And again, it's not a guarantee, it just helps to
give you an idea.
Yeah, give you a little kickstart, if you will.
It may happen.
Right.
Doesn't mean that it's gonna, but conditions are
a little more favorable.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe there's a little low sitting out there this week and it does nothing. Well, if that same low's out there next week, it's just like a little kick in the pants to maybe try to get some development there. So that's the other reason why you have to pay attention to this. Not necessarily all these clickbait posts that you see on social media.
Oh, yes.
Which I know.
Weather influencers, as I call them.
Yes,
Please knock it off. Thank you.
I like Natalie because she gets aggravated like I do with these things. So those are just clickbait posts, just like individual model runs, 8 days, 10 days out, trying to freak people out. It does, it is.
That's my peeve, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
But two things can be true at the same time, to where those are nonsense, but at least the overall, I guess, theme or concept is there because of that MJO phase that we have. And so that's why I think you have to give that just a little more credibility than maybe we would have if it was last week or something like that. So that's what we'll keep an eye on. And again, this is the forecast model for the European. And it's not going to pick up on anything specific necessarily in terms of some sort of well-defined low in the isobars. Frankly, you can see that surface high with the winds over the Gulf. I mean, that's pretty well-defined area of high pressure right at ground level here.
Yeah.
But you do notice, kind of like what that other system was saying, or that other model was saying with the upper level look, just sort of unsettled. Because when you get these troughs, you just get unsettled weather, especially during the summer. If there's lower pressure, it's just rainier usually, more unsettled. And so you can certainly see that across the eastern Gulf into Florida as we head into early next week. And so again, you roll that forward.
Same timeline.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's not, you look in the isobars here, so we don't have like a bunch of them stuck together like you'd have low pressure system or anything like that. But just the fact that it's putting all that rain out there, I think probably indicates that the model is saying, hey, there's some lower pressure here. There's something going on. You know, maybe a low pressure forms, that sort of thing. And again, just because of that MJO scenario, and it likely wouldn't be a strong system, you know, just like Arthur. I mean, we're only in mid-July. We're not looking at conducive ingredients necessarily for something major. But as we saw, it doesn't take anything major.
No.
I mean, it could be something that just spawns up that cluster of storms like we had for, you know, several hours, and then you end up with damage all over the place. So not to say that that's going to happen, but I do think just because of that MJO phase, it's worth noting.
Keep an eye on it.
Yeah, because of what these models are trying to pick up on. And there's the extra factor here that next week is one of my favorite weeks of the year. It's Tales of the Cocktail here in New Orleans.
Oh, yes.
So the extra potential of me getting saddled with a little bit more work than normal instead of being able to go enjoy some of these events like I like to.
You and Kerrigan, bring something on.
That is a factor right there. So there you go. So that's why I think we'll have to keep an eye on the Gulf heading into next week. As you mentioned, sort of that same timeline, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Kind of matches.
Yeah, that
Like
sort
to
of thing.
see consistency.
Exactly. So we'll keep an eye on that for you. We'll come back and talk more about that dust that we mentioned earlier here in just a couple of minutes. All right, we're back. Final segment of Tracking the Tropics here. Hang out with Natalie Parsons. I couldn't remember if I had one more frame on this or not, so we'll jump back into this real quick. This is next Thursday at 3 o'clock. Now, obviously, at this point, we're like 10 days on here.
Yeah.
So let's not put too much stock in this. But you can see, again, what we've talked about with that general pattern with this little surface high here, which again is at ground level. Those are your wind speeds at ground level. So that's heading off to the west. But even now,
Lingering chances of something.
yeah, you see this broad area rain that was off to the east. Now it's backing off to the west. Even the winds are swirling around a little bit in the opposite direction. And so this is not a guarantee. But again, it's just an indication that we're getting into, I think, a 4 to 5 day stretch where you have the right atmospheric phase and you have the model picking up on that. And so it's like, well, we're just going to keep a close eye on this here as we head into early next week. I've got a good buddy that lives in Tampa. I said, let's get that over to him. He says we could use the rain. So I'm like, all right, that's fine. Let's send that over there.
Sharing
so,
it over to you out of love.
So we'll see what happens. But again, sort of just an indication that you got to keep an eye, I think, on early next week. All right, this is that dust that we talked about earlier.
We love our dust.
There's a lot of it. That's a pretty good, that may be the biggest batch this season in the Gulf. Or close to it.
But I think that the next one is decently
that's
proportioned.
Oh,
as
I mean
well.
up to this point.
Yeah.
Especially in the southern Gulf here.
So this is Friday at 7 a.m. Look at that beauty.
Yeah, so we're not getting anything developing and all that, that's for sure. Of course, you know, you start getting into these oranges here, that's sort of moderate layers, so could be enough to impact respiratory issues.
Yes, have your inhalers ready, my friends.
Yes, also great sunrise and sunsets though. When you get that little extra sort of
Little
hazy,
tint.
Little tint. And so that's going to be, and of course we're talking about mostly clear conditions around here by the end of the week. So
No rain, yes.
you'll be able to see that. Let's see as we go forward on that. You mentioned that big batch.
There it comes. Look at that.
Yeah, that's a pretty long, long thread of that stuff coming
And that's
across.
into Wednesday.
Yep.
Oh, wait, is this next week?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, next Wednesday. There's a lot of dust out there
But it's a little
in the Atlantic.
lesser.
Yeah.
So,
What's interesting is there is still some here.
it's a lesser
So maybe we end up with
amount.
a dusty low, a dusty area of low pressure at that point.
Wow, look at that.
That is a pretty good stretch right there, which is just an indication that we're not getting anything out there again for another week or so. And again, not that we would, as you mentioned, we're still a little bit early in the season.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest takeaway for me on a stretch like that is, and I think we talked about it a couple weeks ago, last year we had all these
Comes and
waves
goes.
coming off of Africa with the rain and everything.
Yeah.
Well, obviously you're not looking at any sort of giant wave coming off this because it would be rainy. It wouldn't just be this huge area of dust. And so it's a little bit of an overall pattern shift from what we had last year. So we've moved on from June, and we can go through July here. What is today, like the 14th? We're
Yes,
about
halfway there.
Yeah, halfway
Yes.
through the month. So that's when we start to pick up on maybe a little bit more Gulf activity, some Western Atlantic stuff, that sort of thing. And then you mentioned we transition
Look at that.
into August here.
That's a change.
Yeah. So there's a
Do
lot
a
going on
rewind.
there.
Show it again. Can you do that?
Yeah. Oh,
Wait,
let's
hello,
see here.
dust.
There we go. So
Okay,
we've got
July.
July there, which is interesting to me that there's so much off the East Coast up there too.
Yeah, it doesn't really get much, so that's kind of comical.
Yeah, it's like early season stuff. I guess we've had a few, but you don't seem to see a ton. But then,
No. Look at that.
There we go.
Wowee, that's a change.
Yeah, and so this is why, when we talk about that El Nino impact, the forecasts are for a little bit lower, because you start getting into the, sort of that stretch down here.
70 plus. That's what the red color is.
That's a lot. And, but this year, those are the areas most impacted, of course, by the El Nino, with the trade winds and creating the wind shear and all that sort of thing. So that's why.
This may not fully be accurate.
Yeah, the forecast may be.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it's accurate, obviously, in terms of.
Is this like on average?
Those are the numbers, yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. So, over the past 100 years,
Okay.
these are more of the climatological averages. But when most of them are forming down there, and this is the year that you expect more rough conditions down there, I guess is the theme, then that's why we're looking at probably not as much activity farther out to the east. And then, of course,
whoa.
September. September, your peak time there.
Whoa.
And again, that El Nino type impact here in the reds. And what's interesting is this is number of named storms passing within 150 miles of a location. So I don't know. I mean, certainly this indicates development points, but I think it also indicates track, a lot of times, right? Because a lot of times we'll see, like last year, all these formed out here,
Yes.
and then they just turn north.
Did, yeah.
So I don't think that map is necessarily a point of origin map as much as it is.
Gives you an idea.
Right,
as
here's where
to
these storms are.
1944 to 2020
Yeah.
on average.
Right, so I think this does indicate that, they're not necessarily forming all the way through here, but there are storms at some point running up through that corridor, which is certainly,
Okay.
I mean, that was the theme last year, just
It was unreal.
all the time.
Poor Bermuda.
They were. They took it a couple of times. Although they always seem to just miss, it seems like.
it
it's
was
like the center
close.
goes. Last year, I think, was closer
It was
than a
very
lot of time. It
close.
was. I remember thinking, wow, this is the year where they seem to be getting a little bit more action than normal.
But where did they evacuate to?
Oh, no, they just got to
They just deal with it?
sit there and take it. Yeah.
Oh, poor
I
Bermuda.
guess trying to find a hill or something. But you also never really hear of any problems. When you think about it.
No,
it's
that's
like,
true. It's always like the Caribbean
Exactly.
area.
Like
The
Jamaica a couple
Bahamas.
years ago and Melissa and all that.
Yeah.
Bahamas, we get
That's-
video from. But I don't know when the last time was I saw a video of massive tropical damage coming out of Bermuda.
Do not send me down a rabbit hole. That's what I'm going to be doing when
it's
we're
very
done.
strange.
Looking up damage from Bermuda over the
Maybe
years.
so. Look for that coming up the next couple of days on Wgno.com. Natalie's Bermuda damage.
We did some digging.
Bermuda damage assessment. The old BDA. And then, of course, you got that secondary zone here in the Gulf where, as we know, in September,
Anything's possible.
It's just anybody's game at that point. A lot of times we'll get those around Labor Day weekend, of course, Katrina, all of them really within that same
Window.
4 or 5 day stretch. Ida, Gustav, Isaac, all of those coming up sort of around that Labor Day time frame. And then you start to
shrinks down.
shrink that activity as we get into October. Still the focus on the Caribbean.
That's a massive shrink down, though.
It really is. It's amazing how quickly it turns. You start getting those fronts in, cooler air. And that's kind of also the reason for those tracks, is you start to get those fronts coming across. Anything that develops down here sort of gets picked up in those fronts and then, lifted off to the
Scoots
northeast.
out.
So that's really the reason for that. And then, of course, November,
Bye-bye.
you're really
November.
tapering things off at that point. So see what happens. General takeaways, though.
Stay tuned for next week. We
There
may
you
have
go.
things to go talking about even further.
That's right. We'll be
We don't
back.
want it, but,
We don't want it. Yeah, it could be a much more engaging episode of Tracking the Tropics next Tuesday if stuff is popping up by that point. We'll see. So we'll have all the latest for you. Of course, stay with us here through the week as well, WGNO and WGNO.com. Hank Allen for Natalie Parsons, thanks for sticking with us. We'll see you next week.